Hey everyone, welcome to Growth Notes. In a previous Growth Note, I covered why we need success metrics. In this one, I'll cover how we choose a good one. There are several different qualities that make up a good success metric, and I'll cover the four main ones. The first one is that you want a success metric that will capture the real purpose of why you're building this feature or the purpose of this initiative overall. So we can look at this in a few different areas. Let's say it's an infrastructure project. Here you can usually just measure directly things like a decrease in cost or an increase in performance or an increase in reliability. When we're looking at another category, like adding new features to a product, here the temptation is usually to look at how many people are using that feature. But we want to dig deeper. So when we're looking at Eureka, the real reason we built Eureka was not just to allow people to do a Eureka search. The real reason was so that they could find and consume existing content in ThoughtSpot more easily. So rather than looking at the number of people who are doing Eureka searches, it would be preferable to look at the amount of content being consumed and whether we're able to move that. If you then look at something like CSV upload for the free trial, we did that really to give people an alternative to connecting to their cloud data warehouse, to give them another way so they could still do a search on their own data. So rather than looking at the number of CSVs that are uploaded or the number of people uploading CSVs, it would be better to look at the number of people who are getting to the point where they are searching on their own data in the free trial. And a third category is when you're coming up with a new design for existing features. So for pinning, the goal was we wanted to get people to save more content to pinboards. So rather than looking at the number of people pinning, it would be better to look at the number of items being pinned to pinboards overall. And if you look at something like the formula builder, if we make that easier, the success metric for it shouldn't be the number of people using Formula Builder. It should be, why do we have Formula Builders in the first place in our product? And that's so people can build answers that would be very hard for them to create if we didn't have that. So instead of just looking at the number of formulas created or the number of people building formulas, it would be preferable to look at the number of answers that have a formula in it. The second quality that we want to look at is making sure that your success metric is easily measurable. And there are a few parts to this. The first part is making sure that just the data to measure it is easily accessible, like the number of queries. It's something we're logging, we know how to get it, it's right there. The second aspect is you want to make sure it's something that you can measure exactly. You want to avoid things where you have to guess or where you have to estimate, like the number of valuable searches or the likelihood to renew. Those are things where you have to guess, you have to estimate, like who's to say whether a search is valuable or not. So focus on something that's exact, like the number of times somebody has done something in an app. That we can measure exactly. And a third element here is you want a metric that will change quickly, because you're going to make a change to the product and you want to see in a reasonably short amount of time whether or not that change has had an impact. A third quality that you want to focus on is having a success metric that reflects improvements you're making anywhere in the customer journey, whether it's acquisition or engagement or retention. So something like the number of weekly queries across all our customers is a good metric for that, because if I acquire more users, they're going to generate more queries. If I get my existing users more engaged and they use ThoughtSpot more, that's going to generate more queries. Or if I retain my users for longer, so they don't churn, they're going to be able to generate more queries for longer. So you want to look at something like that metric versus a metric such as the number of new people this month who started using my feature. That focuses only on the acquisition of new users for your feature. If you get existing users to use it more often, that metric won't move. It's only focused on new users. And the fourth point I want to focus on is usually focused on the overall product. It's the North Star metric for the overall product. But I think it's valuable to be aware of, and for completeness, I'll include it here as well, which is that you want a success metric that correlates with revenue. So if I move the metric, then things happen throughout the user journey, and ultimately that should result in some higher revenue. That does beg the question as to, well, why don't we just use revenue as our success metric? There's a few reasons why I recommend against using revenue directly. The first is that it's a lagging metric. It's the result of everything else we're doing that results in the revenue. You want something that's more upstream, that's more of a leading indicator instead of a lagging indicator. The second thing is it's just a measure of what people are paying, which doesn't necessarily directly relate to the value they're getting. But if you can measure how often they're using features or how often they're using the product overall, that's a much better signal that they're getting value, and you can measure the increase and the decrease of value even if the amount they're paying is the same. The third reason is that revenue is highly susceptible to changes in your pricing models. So you can increase or decrease prices and your revenue goes up or down accordingly, but that has nothing to do with any changes you've made in the product itself. And then the last thing is just, it tends to be less inspirational for product teams to focus on just dollars being made and revenue being made, rather than things that are driving more value to the end users that they're building these features for in the first place. So that gives you a quick summary of some of the things you can use to choose a good success metric. If you have any comments or any questions, let me know. Thank you.